I'll start with you, Director Ray. Let me ask you, as I'm sure, I know you're familiar with this, the most downloaded app in the world, one of the most downloaded app in the world, is a social media company, TikTok. Could the Chinese government, through its ownership of ByteDance, that owns ByteDance US, if they wanted to, and ByteDance US were willing to cooperate or forced to cooperate, could they use TikTok to control data on millions of users?
Yes.
Could they use it to control the software on millions of devices, given the opportunity to do so?
Yes.
Could they use it to drive narratives, like to divide Americans against each other? For example, let's say China wants to invade Taiwan, to make sure that Americans are seeing videos arguing why Taiwan belongs to China and why the U.S. should not intervene?
Yes, and I would make the point on that last one in particular that we're not sure that we would see many of the outward signs of it happening if it was happening. And I think the most fundamental piece that cuts across every one of those risks and threats that you mentioned that I think Americans need to understand is that something that's very sacred in our country, the difference between the private sector and the public sector, that's a line that is non-existent in the way the CCP operates.
Do you think it's valuable to look at how TikTok operates in China versus the U.S.? For example, in the U.S., kids are being encouraged to choke themselves out. We've had kids die. In China, they're encouraged to focus on math and science and building the country. Is that an example of how two different versions of TikTok, one feeding our society poison and the other inculcating positive values, an example of how potentially or in reality TikTok could be used to damage our country?
I think those are among many sort of telling indicators that we should be looking at in assessing the national security concerns this poses.
So they can collect our data, manipulate information, poison the minds, and feed garbage into the minds of millions of people and so forth. Given the threat, I imagine this is the reason why TikTok is no longer allowed on federal devices pretty soon. No federal devices can have TikTok on it, correct?
Well, certainly at the FBI, TikTok never has been, and nor will it be approved. And I think it's my understanding that that's about to be in place across the entire federal government.
So given the weight of all this, does anyone in the panel disagree that TikTok is not a good thing for America? Well, if no one disagrees, my question is then, if TikTok is bad for America, and we've talked about all these disadvantages and potential harm that's caused by it, should the fact that it is popular among people under the age of 35 be the reason why we don't take strong action against it?
Not from my perspective.
Because that's what the Secretary of Commerce said is, that potentially we want to do something about this because it would upset people under the age of 35. So I guess my point, just tie it all up, is this is a substantial national security threat for the country of a kind that we didn't face in the past. So we're still, at the end of the day, it's not about some grown man in the middle of the day putting up videos, that people that have a job shouldn't be putting up. But it's also about all these other things that we've talked about, the data, the ability to manipulate information. I would imagine that it's probably one of the most valuable surveillance tools on the planet. I mean, if we went out and decided to build something like this of our own to influence or spy on another society, I'm not sure we could build something like this, or even better. And we've invited them in and protected them by our laws. So I don't understand why this company is allowed to operate as long as it's owned. It's my understanding, and maybe Director Haynes, you can clarify this, but I think this is the case. Under Chinese law, any company